Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hot Seat. I am your host, Brock Vieira, and this show is presented by Team NBS Media. We are here to talk about Notre Dame football. You love them, you love to hate them. No matter what, they are always in the national spotlight. As they enter the 2023 season, there's a lot of changes going around with the program. They have a new quarterback in Sam Hartman. They had to replace some players on the defense who left for the NFL draft. So we're going to dive into that, their season, and also the outlook for the program as we enter this new era of conference realignment. As we all know, Notre Dame is independent, but they're trying to move a lot of pieces behind the scenes in order to get other teams into the right place so they can maintain their own schedule. We're going to talk about how that's affecting them, their schedule outlook for the future, and whether they could potentially join a conference in the next 5 to 10 years. We have two very special guests today. The first guy you guys have seen before on a variety of the shows that I have, whether that be Midnight Sports Talk, College Football Forecast, just basically anything happening with Team NBS Media. He is a contributor for Team NBS Media. He's always pushing out articles on various topics, teams. He has a tremendous amount of knowledge throughout every single sport ever into existence. And he is a diehard Notre Dame fan. You always know that whenever he comes on the show, we're always chopping it up. We're always talking a little bit of trash. Welcome back to the show, Greg Rector. Greg, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Brock, how are you?
I'm doing great. Like as I mentioned, you are all sold on Notre Dame entering this season. We've talked about it for a long time. You always said the reason why Notre Dame can never compete with the big boys in the SEC is because they couldn't successfully recruit the quarterback and cornerback positions. Two things that have been done under Marcus Freeman. What are your first thoughts about the season coming up?
Well, next week, of course, we are playing in the Shamrock Series in Dublin against the Naval Academy. And I think the Notre Dame season is going to be a much better one than Marcus Freeman's first season was.
Absolutely. Well, we'll jump more into that, but next we're going to bring on our second guest. He is a contributor for Bears Wire. He's an all-around football guy. He did as a player. He's doing it now as a contributor. He's followed the Notre Dame program for many, many years. Let's bring on him onto this show. He is a good friend of Josh Keatley, so anyone that follows us on College Football Forecast, you already know that these guys are as intelligent as they come. Welcome to the show, Nate Atkins. Nate, how are you doing today?
Hey, Brock, I'm doing well. That's a great intro. I hope I don't let you down here on the intelligence piece, but I'll do my best. But yeah, I also used to cover Notre Dame for Irish Breakdown through Sports Illustrated, so know the program pretty well.
Exactly. And these are two gentlemen, as mentioned, you guys know the program and now you have followed it. You guys watched them for years and you guys seen them go through a tremendous amount of transition in the 21st century. My earliest memory of Notre Dame was them losing in their New Year's Six bowl games, or at that time BCS bowl games of the Charlie Weiss era. We saw them go into the Brian Kelly era, and then obviously now they're in the Marcus Freeman era. We are finally starting to see them become, what's the right word? Likeable again is the best way to say the least. I am all in on the Fighting Irish in 2023. Let's pull up the schedule so we all can take a look at it. They start out, as Greg mentioned, at not at Navy, but they play Navy in Dublin, Ireland. They have a couple easy games: Tennessee State, Central Michigan. They do have some very difficult games: Ohio State, USC, Clemson. Do try to revenge their loss last year to Stanford in Stanford with new head coach Troy Taylor. At Duke. That's not an easy game at all, considering the work that Mike Elko and the Blue Devils did last year. Louisville Cardinals new coach in Jeff Brom, and also bringing over his brother Brian at NC State, that they have had tremendous success over recent years, and also the redemption story of Phil Jerkovich at Pitt, with Pitt. They play at Notre Dame. Looking at this schedule, I'm gonna start off with you, Greg. What are we looking at record wise?
10-2.
10 and where are those two losses?
I'll stick with the Ohio State and the USC losses.
Ooh, I know that USC loss hurts you deeply, but we'll
Yeah.
talk about that for in a second because they will be traveling to South Bend for that game. Nate, what is your outlook on this season?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of look at it on like a spectrum. So I'd say worst case, right? They're probably 8-4, and that's dropping some games. So I think that there's the three big ones on the schedule: Clemson, Ohio State, USC. So they lose all three of those, plus they have another upset like Marshall. Best case, I think they only lose to one and they go 11-1. But I think Greg's right. I think they finish somewhere around 10-2, 9-3, something like that.
Absolutely. So let's just bring that graphic back up for a second. I kind of agree with you, Nate, and I agree with you, Greg. I kind of have them at that 10-2 mark as well. I think we're all kind of unified in that Ohio State and USC are going to beat them. USC, I think, plays them too early in the season for the weather to play a major factor. They're going to be hitting their stride as a team offensively, and with that kind of firepower, it's going to be too much for the Fighting Irish defense to be able to defend against. Not Notre Dame, Ohio State is a very interesting team because I'm not exactly sold on them yet. Obviously, they're going through a major quarterback change. We've never seen him play live snaps with this offense against a team that's trying to take his head off. So I do have some questions about how effective this Ohio State team can be. As we saw them play last year, even though it was week one, that was a drastically better offense on paper that Ohio State had compared to this year, and they struggled mightily against Notre Dame. Notre Dame was able to run the ball down their throats. They just didn't have that quarterback passing prowess to really, make the difference for the Buckeyes, and the Buckeyes are able to pull away late. I think you guys should win every other game. I mean, majority of these are Hammies, Navy, Tennessee State, Central Michigan, so on and so forth. But I'm not sold on Troy Taylor this year. I think he's going to take at least 3 years to get that program back on track. And Clemson, I'm not sold on Cade Klubrick. I really believe that since Tony Elliott was made the all-time play caller, the Clemson offense hasn't been the same since. Obviously, he left last year for Virginia, but they still are going through the changes. Now, they bring in Garrett Riley this year, which is obviously a massive step up because he took TCU to the national championship game, but it takes time for a system to really implement. I think last year was just a one-off for how successful he was so quickly. So I agree with Greg. 10-2 is where I have them at, but I do think that we could possibly see them go undefeated as well, as much as that pains me to say. One of the things that's going to be critical to that happening is the quarterback play of Sam Hartman, probably the best quarterback prospect Notre Dame has had since Everett Golston, if we're being honest. Greg, you've been following this a lot. What are your thoughts on Sam Hartman, and what are your thoughts on this offense?
Well, obviously Hartman has the experience. Doing what he did at Wake Forest, he was pretty solid there. And if the Notre Dame offense actually passes the ball on the outside instead of in the middle, as has been their want for the last many, many, many years, we should see more offense out of the Fighting Irish.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned, when we think about Notre Dame offensively, and this is not just through the through the Kelly era, but pretty much them all time. They've always been a down the hill, hard nosed running football team. And the reason why is because one of those guys this year is going to be Joe Alt. Can you talk about Joe Alt and his impact to this Notre Dame Fighting Irish team?
Yeah, I can. So I think Joe Alt is, first round pick when you talk about offensive line, right? And he's got the NFL pedigree. His dad played in the NFL. Notre Dame's done a really good job historically of recruiting and putting guys in the NFL on the offensive line, right? And I think this is no different. I would say it's not just Joe Alt. I'd say you've got Blake Fisher and you've got Zeke Correll on that offensive line as well. 3 guys that are probably NFL caliber offensive linemen. So again, I think Joe Alt's the tackle and he's going to be the bookend there on the left side. But this is a NFL caliber offensive line, and Notre Dame should be able to run the ball pretty easy against most teams.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons why I always like talking and chopping out with Josh, because he played the running back position when he was at Valpo,
Yep.
that you saw personally. And we always know that any effect hard nose attacking running back. Who is that guy for the Fighting Irish at the moment?
Yeah, I think it's Audric Estime, right? I think he's the big bruiser there. That's going to be their number one back who they're going to rely on to really pound the ball. You saw even they moved Chris Tyree out of the backfield, converted him to wide receiver. He was more of that gadget speedster guy. It looks like they've kind of decided, let's move him out, let him play wide receiver, and just hand over the running back position to Estime.
Absolutely. Greg, I'm going to throw it back to you because you have been studying the wide receiver position for a long, long time. Who are some of the studs on this wide receiver core that you are excited about?
They've got Tobias Merriweather, who will be the X receiver. Your Z receiver is going to be Jaden Thomas. Then there's a couple of freshmen who are going to be used. Rico Flores Jr., Jaden Greathouse. Those are the two freshmen. Um, both guys are pretty solid from their high school careers. Let's see what happens in the college game, though. But yeah, those are the guys who are going to be catching balls from Mr. Hartman.
Absolutely. Nate, I'm going to come back to you. Obviously, they lost the big tight end last year, Michael Mayer, to the NFL draft. How are we feeling about this tight end room headed into 2023?
I think it's okay. I think there's nothing really to get excited about when you look at Notre Dame at tight end, and I think that might be a good thing, right, for the first time in a long time. You can make the argument, as much as I like Michael Mayer, that he kind of held that offense back because it was overly reliant on getting him the ball. So I think as you bring in Hartman and you have the wide receivers that Greg mentioned, now you've got a chance to actually start spreading the ball around, getting it outside, and not just always looking for Meyer in the middle of the field. I would say Hartman's probably the best prospect Notre Dame's had since Brady Quinn, if that's not going too far back for you, Brock. And if you remember, you said Everett Golson. One of the things I think that hung Everett Golson up was he was always looking for Tyler Eifert. And so always looking for that tight end to throw it short, throw it in the middle of the field, I think just held that offense back. And I think that was what was happening to Notre Dame last year. So no real star tight end to really get excited about, but that's okay because you've got Merriweather, you've got Greathouse, you've got a guy there too in Colsey who maybe actually puts it together and shows up. So for the first time in a long time, Notre Dame should have really good wide receivers.
Yeah.
Which is disturbing to think about. And you don't feel that Ian Book was that guy at quarterback? Maybe Jimmy Clausen a little bit.
Come on now, stop it.
I would say with Ian Book, right? I think Ian Book was a winner, but I don't know that he has the arm talent that someone like a Sam Hartman has. I don't want to discredit anything Ian Book did or even Tommy Reeves, right, when he was there. But I think there's guys that are get the most out of what they have, and I would put Ian Book in that category. And then there's guys that are just very talented, right? Sam Hartman's one of those guys. And so, again, he's a guy where you're always thinking, like, this could be a first-round pick quarterback. I don't know that anyone ever thought that about Ian Book.
No. That was just a nice little pot shot at Greg because I was like to harp on him in private discussions about the history of Notre Dame quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Well, it's true. And for a long time, Notre Dame didn't need a great quarterback because they always had a great defense. Now, obviously, Marcus Freeman is a defensive coordinator. Greg, Al Golden is his DC, which you already know I have some feelings about him in general as a coach. But they lost some players last year on that defense, kind of highlighted by the loss of Isaiah Folksky to the NFL. Greg, what are you feeling about this defense entering 2023?
Well, it's a 4-3 scheme, which they'll be using a Viper and a Rover. If you understand what a Viper is, he's going to be the guy who goes back in coverage from the defensive line. And, of course, the Rover is the typical linebacker safety type guy. And both of those players for the Fighting Irish happen to be from the state of Hawaii. Oh,
Yes.
wonder how that worked out, Brock.
Yeah, shout out to my home state, which unfortunately has fallen in love with the Fighting Irish over the years because of players like Manti Te'o and Alohi Gilman and Myron Amosa Tauvailoa, and also their Catholic institution at Hawaii is a very Catholic place, and a lot of kids go to Catholic school, blah, 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 Fighting Irish, boo. That's all I can say about that. But you are right. They do have a tremendous amount of players from Hawaii, kind of highlighted by Jordan Botello, who will be playing that Viper role as well. But they also have a very good transfer from Ohio State and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, who will be able to anchor the defensive line. What are your feelings on him, Greg?
I'm excited to have that young man in the Fighting Irish uniform, especially when they do get to play Ohio State this year.
Yes. Oh, we already know that's going to be a fun weekend, especially when I talk to Josh because he is absolutely jacked for that game. Now, I'm going to take it to you, Nate. As I mentioned earlier in the show, when Greg and I talked, the one thing he always mentions is Notre Dame has never been able to consistently acquire those high-level corners to stop the passing offenses in college football. They got a dude in Cam Hart. Can you talk about Cam Hart in this DB room entering this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam Hart's to your point, a dude, right? And one of the best guys they've had in a long time. I mean, he's a fifth year. He came back. I think he's another guy that could have went pro last year, and honestly, a little surprised that he didn't. But when I look at Cam Hart, I mean, it's a guy that can do it all. Whether you need him to play man, whether you need him to play zone, he's just a winner there, right? And I think he's very fluid. He's a great athlete. Again, Notre Dame very rarely gets these guys, and what I like about Cam Hart the most, and I think really helps him out, is he's a former wide receiver, right? I think coming out of high school, so he tracks the ball really well. He can actually catch, right? He's able to generate interceptions. It's been a long time since we've had a guy like this. I try to think. Well, I guess you had Julian Love, but I think going back, Greg, maybe someone like, I don't know, Ambrose Wooden or something like
Wooden,
that. I don't know.
Wooden, yeah, Wooden is the guy that Hart kind of reminds me of, right?
Yeah, so it's exciting to see that defensive presence again in the secondary at Notre Dame.
Absolutely. So, Nate, I'm gonna finish this section off with you. The defense, obviously, Freeman is the defensive guru. That's neither here nor there, but he does have his head coach responsibilities, so he's delegating it to Al Golden. This is a guy that's been around college football and football in general for a long, long time. We all remember him for his tie and Miami and the disaster that was, but he's had a very successful career as an assistant. Are you confident that he is the right coordinator for this Fighting Irish defense this year, or do you think that they're going to move on from him after 2023?
I think it depends. I think for Al, I mean, this could lead to another head coaching job for him, right? I think if I look at his track record as a coach, maybe you say it's not so great, but on defense, I mean, he's recruited some good guys. If you think about Muhammad Wilkerson or Terrence Knighton, Tahir Whitehead, just on the defensive side. So I wouldn't underestimate, Rod Golden as a recruiter and being a coordinator. I think sometimes when you talk about coaches, some guys are much better coordinators than head coaches. But since he's had that head coach experience before, I think he's got the opportunity to use this as a stepping stone back into it. But I come back to, I wouldn't overestimate or underestimate him as a defensive coordinator. I think he's very good at it. I think he's built his career around it. And I think what he can do is he can help round out some of that for Marcus Freeman and give him someone that he can trust, where he doesn't have to always be in the defensive room, making sure that the plays are being called, guys know where they need to be. He's got a guy who's a little bit more mature, a little bit more experienced that he can lean on. And I think that's the real benefit of having Al Golden there.
Yeah,
Golden will help out with the front seven, right? Yeah. I mean, that's where Al Golden has been really solid at.
I agree.
That's why he's there.
I'm in agreement with both of you. When I look at Al Golden's career trajectory, I feel that it mirrors Manny Diaz in a variety of ways. And obviously not just because of their stops in Miami, but their ability to produce defensive players from the coordinator role, and obviously, his time as a head coach. I agree that we could see him jump back up. I don't think that's the right call for him. So if Freeman is the future of Notre Dame, which I think we're all kind of in agreement that this dude is the guy for it, having a guy like Golden as a defense coordinator for a long run could be very beneficial in terms of building a truly successful and consistent winning program. We'll talk about Freeman in a little bit. We're just going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about offense one more time, but this time the scheme, the new OC, and what we can expect from them from a play calling standpoint headed forward. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Once again, I am Brock Vera. This is the Hot Seat. We are powered by Team NBS Media, as you guys just saw in the promo. Follow all of us at teamnbsmedia.com. We're producing great quality content every single day. We're talking about every single sport. We're talking movies, TV shows, sometimes politics, sometimes food. There's a whole variety of things on there for everyone's taste. Check us out, teamnbsmedia.com. We're back with Greg Rector at Greg Cowboys, and then Nate Atkins of Bears Wire, talking Notre Dame football. We just got done talking about them offensively with Sam Hartman. We just got done talking about the defense and the defensive coordinator, Al Golden. They bring in a new offensive coordinator this year. No more Tommy Rees. For some people, they're sad. For some people, they're very happy. I'm sad because that means they're probably going to be better offensively, in my opinion. They're bringing Gerard Parker. This is a guy that was the tight ends coach for Notre Dame in 2022. He is now the offensive coordinator and tight ends coach in 2023. Nate, I'm going to throw it back to you. What are your expectations for Parker in this offense this year?
Yeah, I think it's going to look a lot different. I think what you had with Tommy Rees, right, was someone who was more dedicated to power run, running the ball, letting the run set up the pass. I think what you're going to see is some of that still here, but now with an actual quarterback who can run the RPO, who can be a threat to pass the ball vertically down the field, and you're going to get more of that spread concept out of Gerard Parker. I think, when he was at West Virginia, you look at what Neil Brown was running, they were running the spread. When you look at what James Franklin was using when he was at Penn State, again, it's the spread. So I would expect to see more RPO. I would expect to see more of the ball getting kind of tossed around and less run heavy, right? So maybe more of a balanced attack between the pass and the run.
Absolutely. And Wake Forest ran the RPO to tremendous success when Sam Hartman was there. And their version of the RPO is quite different than everybody else's. It's more of a run draw into the pass than anything else is the best way I can describe it. Could we see that kind of style with Hartman and Parker, or are we going to go back to the more traditional outlook of the RPO?
Yeah, I guess that depends, right? I would say you probably want to put some things into the playbook that Sam Hartman's comfortable with, right? So maybe you give him some of that, but you also want to give him or give the offense things that they're comfortable with, right? Because you've got guys that have been here for a couple of years, running a different offense, and now you've got Sam coming in. So it'll have to be that balance, right? But to your point, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the old Wake Forest concepts show up here for Notre Dame in 23.
Yeah,
absolutely. Greg, I'm gonna throw it to you. Sam Hartman and Wake Forest in 2021 were 8-0 at one point before they lost to Clemson. They were a genuine college football playoff team, and they probably should have been ranked higher than they were. But obviously, brand dictates everything in terms of rankings. Now Hartman is at a bigger brand. If they can get this offense going, I currently have in my personal top 25. I have Notre Dame at 11. The AP and the coaches have them at 13. Can they make the playoffs with one loss, or do they have to go undefeated in order to make the playoffs, Greg?
Oh, they got to go. They have to go unbeaten. They can't lose. I mean, if they do go unbeaten and they've beaten Ohio State, Clemson, and USC, which would be the three teams who are, likely conference champions themselves, then they're in. But if you lose to one of them, the voters will knock them out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
I guess I disagree. So I mean, obviously, I think if they go undefeated, they make it. But I think at 11-1, Notre Dame gets in. I think most people would say they tend to get favorable voting from the playoff group, and I think you'd be hard pressed to keep an 11-1 Notre Dame out if they've beaten an Ohio State or a Clemson, maybe even a USC at that point. So I think they'd have the resume if they have one loss to get in, because they'd have beaten probably two teams in the top 10 with Clemson, USC, and Ohio State on this schedule.
that is a very fair point. Just to your guys' information, for my prediction for the college football playoff, I have Alabama at 1, Michigan at 2, USC at 3, and Georgia at 4. Obviously, this would be a SEC championship game matchup between Bama and Georgia, both teams getting in. Clemson at 5 and Ohio State at 6 as the first two teams are out. Notre Dame plays 3 teams on that list. Honestly, they should be playing 4, but the Michigan Notre Dame rivalry is in the toilet, and I am still upset about that. Regardless, they beat 2 teams on there. I don't think you can really make an argument why they shouldn't be in the college football playoff unless they have that random loss to a other team on that schedule. But fortunately for them, they play 2 of those teams at home, and then obviously they play Clemson at Clemson. And Death Valley isn't as, what's the right term, difficult to win in as in years past, in my opinion. Obviously, we saw that last year with the Gamecocks. They walked into Clemson, they won, and then Notre Dame beat them in the Gator Bowl last year. Nate, I'm gonna kick it to you. We're gonna talk about USC and Notre Dame first. What are the keys for Notre Dame in order to stop USC and beat them?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I mean, you look at Lincoln Riley, right? You're talking about another one of these spread, almost like air raid style offenses. So I mean, you're going to have to get to the quarterback in that. You're going to have to get a Caleb Williams. Again, he's a runner, so that's someone where you're going to have to make sure you're bringing him down. You're not allowing him to extend plays, make plays with his legs. But I guess ultimately, right, the question is, can you keep scoring, right? I look at what happened to USC against Tulane in that bowl, and I look at what's happened to Oklahoma historically. Lincoln Riley struggles with defense. And so when you see he brings in Cliff Kingsbury there as an offensive assistant, that's really exciting. But it's a two-phase, maybe three-phase game if you count special teams. And so I would say if Notre Dame can keep scoring, right, and they can stop Caleb Williams a couple of times, they could find themselves in a position where they win that game, because I haven't seen anything to give me hope that USC has improved on defense. I just know that they've reloaded on offense. So stop Caleb Williams, actually score the ball on offense, and you'd actually have a good chance of beating that team.
Absolutely. Greg, I will come to you. They play Clemson at Clemson. Clemson will be having, obviously, their star running back, Will Shipley. They have a new quarterback, Cade Klubnik, who we watched in the Orange Bowl last year. How does Notre Dame beat the Tigers?
They're going to out-physical them, plain and simple. On the offensive line, the defensive lines, they're going to be more physical than Clemson, and that's how you beat up on Clemson.
Absolutely. And then, Nate, I will throw it back to you for the final of the three top matchups. That's going to be Notre Dame, Ohio State. This is a game that Notre Dame played very close last year in week one. This is a game that they're going to have marked on the schedule. They're playing in South Bend. How does the Fighting Irish beat Ohio State?
Yeah, I think it comes back to what Greg talked about with Clemson, right? This is a team where it's about establishing the run and being a power physical team and making those plays with the pass when you need to. But, even when you look recently, right, how Michigan was able to beat Ohio State, it's with the run. So, again, it comes back to defense, but it's run the ball, play defense, keep Ohio State off the field as much as you can, right? So you're putting pressure on that young quarterback that he has to make plays every time he's on the field, and you just squeeze out a close one.
And Cam Hart has to be an absolute star against that Harrison.
Marvin Harrison, yeah.
Oh, I mean that's just a nightmare right there, right? Oh boy.
Yeah, I mean Harrison's going to be a tough matchup for anybody. Yeah. But yeah, I mean you'd expect Cam Hart to cover him and put in a good day's work against him. So, but he's not. I mean, Ohio State's loaded on offense, right? Because you've got Ekbuka on the other side. You've got a lot of good receivers there. But yeah, absolutely. Stopping Marvin Harrison is a must.
So kind of a follow-up question for you. We talk about that Hart versus Harrison Jr. matchup, but as you mentioned, they have Ibuka, they have Julian Fleming. Is there another DB on this Fighting Irish team that you feel confident that can be a lockdown guy for them?
I don't know. Let me look at the. I gotta look at the depth chart. Greg, I'll let you take it.
DJ Brown is the free safety for the Irish. I mean, he was solid last year, and he's another graduate guy. Xavier Watts, the strong safety. I'm not too sure what you're going to get out of Xavier, but the other corner is Benjamin Morrison, who's a sophomore, and if Benjamin Morrison can keep up with the other Ohio State receiver, it could be a tough day for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, that's the name I forgot. I mean, Ben Morrison, I think, had a really good freshman year too, Greg. So
yeah,
I think coming into this year, playing across from Cam Hart, he should get a lot of opportunity to. I'm guessing teams are going to pick on him, and he'll have opportunity to show if he's really that guy. So Morrison and Hart.
Yeah. Morrison is as Brock knows from all of our draft talk. He's one of those other guys that I tend to focus on.
You like him?
Well, yeah, I do it with all of these schools that had this shutdown, lockdown corner, right? Well, I always go look at the other guy because the other guy is the one who's getting tested.
Yeah, exactly. He is the other guy.
Yep.
Yeah, so for all of us who are the draft community, this is what we refer to for what Greg does as a Damon Arnett thing. And basically, when Damon Arnett played with Jeff Okudah, no one was really trying to press Okuda, so they always got to Arnett, and obviously that's why we all focus on Arnett. Same thing with Maryland this year with Jacorian Bennett, and who's the first round pick from there? Deontay Banks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so same thing. So it's going to be a very interesting match to see. Fortunately for Notre Dame, they don't play a great passing team in their opener against Navy. Before we go to our next commercial break, I want to get both your thoughts on the opener against Navy, and should the Shamrock series continue. Greg, I want to start with you.
Well, this will be the first time that Notre Dame actually hosts Navy. So we get NBC's coverage instead of the other networks for this. Notre Dame is going to come out and they're going to be a lot better than they were against Navy last year. Bottom line. Last year they needed a miracle catch to beat Navy. This year I don't see it being that anywhere near as close because I think Notre Dame's defense has gotten enough practice in now to stop the triple option, right? Which is what Navy runs. And they're going to be a lot better than they were last year.
Absolutely. So Navy is running a new version of the triple option. The reason why is because you can't cut block outside of the box anymore. I believe there's a rule change.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're gonna plan on passing the ball more, which I don't know how that necessarily is gonna work out, but we'll see. Obviously, Navy is going through a transitional period because they just fired Ken Matulolo last year, the longtime head coach, bringing in a new guy this year. They had to get rid of a bunch of coaches due to refusal to take the COVID vaccine from a couple years ago. So it's a very odd spot for the midshipmen right now. They play in Dublin, Ireland. The line is minus 21 for Notre Dame. I'm hammering the minus 21 for Notre Dame. I think this game is going to be like 42-7. Greg, what is your prediction for Notre Dame Navy?
Well, as I wrote about in my article for this game, I have it closer than you do. I do have 38-24, only because the one running back that Navy does have, he chewed up the Irish last year. I mean, he chewed them right up. That was ugly to watch. I think Navy could be a little bit of a surprise team in their conference as well, just because of the passing. And the quarterback at Navy has got a pretty decent arm.
That's fair. Not Roger Staubach arm, but
decent. No, he's not. He's not Roger the Dodger. No.
I know.
I think Notre Dame wins big in that one, man. I think it's a blowout. I was at the game last year, and it was 35-13 at halftime, right? And it ends up being a 35-32 game, and I think that's really with Notre Dame calling the dogs off at the end in the second half and Navy scoring. So
yeah,
I think last year's final made the game look a lot closer than it really was. I can't see Notre Dame walking out of this thing with a real challenge, right? I think you'll see Navy score a lot of garbage time touchdowns, but I expect to see the same big leader.
And that's why I said 38-24, because Notre Dame will be able to call those dogs off.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, if they can't, it's going to be rough heading into the next game and getting ready for Ohio State. So we'll see.
So one of the things that I cannot stand about the Fighting Irish is their continued attempts to be a global brand while also being a religious institution. And what I mean by that is that they're always playing outside the country or in the Shamrock series, and they're taking these high school kids, taking these college kids and taking them out of their schedule and moving them all over the country for an extra road game that doesn't even matter, like how they played BYU in Las Vegas. Why is Notre Dame playing Las Vegas? That's not a bowl game. How is that in line with values? Why are they playing Wisconsin in Chicago? Why do you have to go all the way to Ireland to play Navy? As I say, I'm not a fan of the way they go about their football thing. Maybe because I'm just a hater. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. However, do you think that flying overseas to play a game is going to be a detriment to them in terms of rest and schedule? Keep in mind, Northwestern and Nebraska, two programs that weren't great anyway, they went overseas and were not even close to being good last year. Obviously, Northwestern, that's their only win of the season. And then Nebraska had a tough game the week after against North Texas before losing to Charleston Southern and obviously firing the head coach after that. Could this game impact the Irish this season at all? The travel, anyway. Greg?
No.
Nate?
I think you're built for it if you go there, right? And these guys have been there for a few years. Like you said, they've been to Vegas. They've been all over the place. They played Navy last year in Baltimore. So it just comes with being at Notre Dame, and I can't see it impacting these kids much.
No, not at all, especially with as many graduate students as they have. These guys, they've got 149 games of experience on defense, 146 on the offense. These guys have been around. They understand that they are Notre Dame. You have to travel. Bottom line.
Fair. You know what's so crazy about college football now is that how many players have like full-blown families that they've been married for like 3-4 years. Like it's disturbing how college football in general has just become BYU on like overdrive. But that's a conversation for another time. We're gonna take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're gonna talk NFL prospects. We're gonna talk about up and coming players for the Irish, and just kind of a final wrap up about how we feel about Marcus Freeman heading forward at his career as a head coach. We'll be right back.
This commercial is brought to you by True Brain. Say hello to True Brain. We're not magicians. We're not going to turn you into a rocket scientist, unless you're already a rocket scientist. We're not big pharma, and our products are custom made to boost mental output. We empower people to do their best thinking.
Welcome back to the hot seat. I'm here with Greg Rector, with Nate Atkins. We are talking Notre Dame football. We just had a great discussion about their offense, the defense, the outlook of the season, and obviously the big matchups against Clemson, USC, Ohio State, and then the opener against Notre Dame in Ireland. Then we're going to talk about the future. I'm going to kick it off with Marcus Freeman. Nate, is this home for Freeman, or is this a stepping stone for him to a better job?
Yeah, I guess the question is, what's a better job, right? So I would say that Notre Dame is still a destination school, and I would say it's not a stepping stone. I think when you look at someone like Brian Kelly, who left to go to LSU, he was looking to win a national championship. I think he had also kind of worn his welcome out at Notre Dame, just from things I know privately. So I think, look, Notre Dame's a destination. It's where we want to be. It's the peak of college coaching in my mind. You know, sure, they don't have what did Brian Kelly talk about? Fresh meals prepared every day by a personal chef or whatever. The guys have, you know, stuff that they're grabbing out of a refrigerator. I mean, boo-hoo, right? Like, so if you really start to split hairs, sure, it doesn't have all the perks of an SEC school, but it's an elite program. It's an elite education. You're on TV every Saturday. Like you said, it's a global brand. Where else can you tell kids, hey, we're going to play in Ireland. We're going to play in Las Vegas. We're going to play in Chicago. We're going to play at Lambeau Field. I mean, these are all selling points. I just don't see it being a stepping stone for Freeman unless we're talking about him getting the head coaching job at his alma mater, Ohio State. I don't know where else he would want to go.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think the only way he leaves is if, you know, Ohio State offers him the job. Greg, first of all, I want to say Brian Kelly probably wore out his welcome after the introductory press conference, knowing him. But that's, you know, a side point for another time. I don't like Brian Kelly in general. And I think that LSU fans who are all hyped about the season are going to get drastically brought down to earth very hard when they realize Brian Kelly is not a national championship level head coach. Greg, you have had to deal with so many coaches throughout Notre Dame's history. Obviously, Lou Holtz was the last coach to win a national championship before you guys went on a whole slurry of random dudes. Bob Davie, Charlie Weiss, Brad Freeman. There's a couple other guys I forgot about.
Okay, yeah.
Is Marcus Freeman the guy to bring you guys a national championship again?
I believe he is. You just look at the way that those kids, when it was announced that he was going to be their next head coach, the excitement level amongst the players who were still at Notre Dame was off the charts. They love this man. And it wasn't just the defensive guys either. It was the offensive guys. They understood that Marcus Freeman understands them as men. They're treated like men. They're treated fairly. Unlike Brian Kelly, who had many, many instances of treating people like garbage, Marcus Freeman doesn't treat people like garbage. He treats you like the man that you are. He doesn't care whether you're black, white, Hawaiian, whatever the case may be. Marcus Freeman is a man that stands up for what Notre Dame believes in. And that is something that Brian Kelly, he had the name, but he never did stand up for what Notre Dame believes in.
Yeah, and I think to Greg's point, one of the things you'll see, and you've seen it already with Freeman, is look at how many former players are now coming back around the program.
Yeah.
Just ready to be affiliated again with Notre Dame football. That you didn't see that while Brian Kelly was still there. It's some of those like quiet, unspoken things that you can see, right? Players are excited about Freeman, not just the ones that are there, but the former players, and he's embraced them as well. So It's a really exciting time in Notre Dame.
Yes. So with coaches, it's all about the long-term deals. And we've seen that with Brian Kelly signing his 10-year, $100 million deal in LSU. We saw it with Lincoln Riley, USC. We saw all over the place. Does Notre Dame, I'm going to start with you, Nate. Does Notre Dame have the ability and the resources to give Freeman his big long-term deal?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, I think Notre Dame's not a school where you worry about money. I think Notre Dame's a school where you will never know what a guy's getting paid, right? But he'll be all right. So I don't think you go to Notre Dame and you're worried, is there money in the pocketbook to pay me? That donor base is deep and it's got a lot of money. The question really becomes, what am I paying a guy $100 million for? You look at Brian Kelly, you're paying $100 million to a coach that's never won anything. You look at Lincoln Riley, you're paying $100 million to a coach that's never won anything. So, yeah, I mean, look, if Marcus Freeman wins and says, I want to get paid like the top coaches in football, I'm sure Notre Dame will have no problem. But if his best thing is being, I made it to the college football playoffs, I want $100 million, I think that's a tough ask.
Yeah, it is.
Totally
It
agree with
is.
that, Nate.
Yeah, it is. Unless you're Bill Tucker at Michigan State, then you can just give it to him
Yeah,
after NY6 bowl win.
Look, there's a lot of coaches that are getting paid, and God bless them. Like I'm never going to criticize them for that, but you look at what they've done, and you say, how? I mean, Mel Tucker getting the head coaching job at Michigan State after just sucking at Colorado, and then them turning around and paying him $100 million, I think is crazy.
Yeah, little bit of an overreaction, but what can you say, Greg? When the Fighting Irish won the Gator Bowl last year, you could have convinced me they won the national championship the way, all the fans are going crazy in the stadium, on social media, in the streets pretty much at this point. Then I started to think about it. When was the last time Notre Dame had a signature bowl win? And the Gator Bowl may not be the highest in terms of acclaim, but outside of a few pinstripe bowls, I don't remember Brian Kelly winning much bowl games. Do you think that Notre Dame's ability to go into a climate like that, to play a team like South Carolina with a quarterback like Spencer Rattler, who was on fire at that point, and win, do you think that that's a program setter, or is this just a flash in the pan for Marcus Freeman?
Oh, I mean, no, that's a bull set mentality, which is different from what you had under Brian Kelly. Bottom line. Marcus Freeman wants his players to win bowl games. He wants to win playoff games. He wants to win a national championship. These players know this. Under Brian Kelly, it was okay. Well, we did well. This is okay, and you guys who are going to go to the NFL, don't worry about showing up. You don't have to play. No, under Marcus Freeman, you're not going to see guys who are going to skip a bowl game.
That's fair. Moving forward,
I would like to point out there was the Citrus Bowl, which I'm sure Greg remembers, where Miles Boykin had the one-handed catch at the end of the game to win it.
Yep.
So that was a signature win, and it was against an SEC school. So I mean, that was out there. It's not a New Year's 6-day game, I don't think, at the Citrus Bowl, but that's probably Notre Dame's key victory. And they blew out Iowa State a couple years back in the Camping World Bowl. So I mean, look, they've got bowl wins, Brock. I don't want to sell them short, but I hear you. Anytime they're on the national stage, Fiesta Bowl, Rose Bowl, national championship 10 years ago against Alabama. It's never looked pretty, but they've got bowl wins. I don't want to sell them short.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fair. And again, majority of my arguments stem from my deep-rooted hatred for the Fighting Irish. But that's again neither here nor there. You, as Greg, you mentioned, some of the guys that are going to the NFL, they just skip the bowl game, do their own thing. But honestly, the NFL is the next level. That's why you play. That's why you play the game, is to play it to the best of your abilities and see how high you can go. Who are the guys on this Fighting Irish team that are the top NFL prospects for Notre Dame?
Joe Alt is
Yeah,
number
Joe
one.
Alt.
Joe, obviously that he's like the highest ranked guy. He's gonna be a top 10 pick no matter what.
Yeah.
First left tackle off the board.
I've got him rated as 1B, along with the kid from Penn State. Yeah, those two tackles are just they're just so together, physically, mentally, and I'll talk about Penn State for a second here. Penn State could knock out Ohio State and Michigan this year. They could beat both of those teams.
Let's not take the piss here.
Oh no.
Yeah, no.
Let's not knock down the Nittany Lions. Those Nittany Lions are one tough group. They are a tough group, and they get Michigan at home this year. It's not the whiteout game. It's not the whiteout game.
Big noon kick. No one loses on big noon kickoff. Come on, Greg. Penn State never wins on big noon kick. Everyone else wins. Come on.
You never know. This is football. I mean, you gotta be healthy, and you gotta be ready, right?
It's true. And Penn State is very impressive. They won the Rose Bowl last year. Drew Aller, that's his first name, right? Drew. Yeah, Aller is a phenomenal quarterback prospect. Singleton, right? Not Singletary. Singleton is a great running back prospect. Yeah, running back prospect. They got some great guys on both sides of the ball, but they're playing their whiteout game against Iowa. That shows mentality. You play that game against Michigan, like how they did several years ago when they smoked them. Penn State they might win one of the two, but to say they're going to win both, that's a little bit outrageous, if you ask me, Greg. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, I'm just saying it's a possibility. There's a possibility out there.
I'm just saying, when push comes to shove, James Franklin in the prime time, it's not a great track record. Outside of the one time they beat Ohio State and but the Michigan whiteout game, do they really have like a super signature victory that says, yeah, they're going to be a national championship contender? Because what I remember is Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley going to Ohio State, balling out, and then losing. I think that's the crux of Penn State. Individual supreme performances, team losses. That's the James Franklin motto, in my opinion. But going back to Notre Dame, just kind of open it up to both of you guys. Just start shooting off your top NFL prospects and where we could see them.
I would say Sam Hartman, right, is another one that's up there. I think Blake Fisher. Yeah, Blake Fisher. Riley Mills on the defensive line. Cam Hart, who we talked about, could have went pro last year. Audric Estime, a running back. I mean, I don't know where running backs go these days, but I think he could be an NFL player. Baptiste, I think, could be an NFL player.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a few. I think, again, this isn't, your Alabama style or et cetera, where it's like they're going to have 3-4 guys go in the first round, but there's a lot of NFL talent on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the Sam Hartman drafted argument, I think it's almost a given. If he's 100% healthy, he will get drafted. That's the way the draft goes now. Because there's no real discernible reason outside the fact they play quarterback that guys like Sean Clifford got drafted, guys like Max Duggan got drafted, especially as high as they did. So I think Hartman is a for sure day 3 pick at the floor. He could be a day 2 pick at his ceiling. Again, we'll just have to wait and see. I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for being on the show. We are wrapping it up. Before we conclude, Greg and Nate, I'll start with you, Greg. I want to get your final thoughts about Notre Dame entering this season and the future of the Fighting Irish, especially in this era of conference realignment. Please go ahead, Greg.
Well, conference realignment is what it is. Whether Clemson and Florida State decide to leave the ACC, who knows, and all that other jazz. If Cal and Stanford joining ACC, possibly, who knows what the alignment is going to end up being. I mean, you've got alignment now on the same par as the transfer portal, right? I mean, holy mother of goodness, I don't understand the alignment here. I just don't get it, right? I mean, it's just bizarre to see West Virginia and Arizona State in the same conference. Okay, I mean, you got 2,000 miles apart, and you're in the same conference. Come on, but Notre Dame will remain an independent. Whether they stick to their commitment to be with the ACC, I don't know, because I mean, they're supposed to in 2033 get another bout with that school up north that I despise. You know who I'm talking about. And of course, you've got USC. What is going on with Notre Dame and USC? Because other than the pandemic year, I mean, it's been 95 years of Notre Dame USC football.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen?
Right.
We don't know if that's going to remain.
Yeah, I mean, now that they're in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't know. And for Notre Dame, I've always said this about Notre Dame. If the SEC ever had the balls to stop playing bug tussle you once a year, and come on up and play at Notre Dame Stadium in November like Miami did. I always had a lot of respect for Miami coming up there and playing Notre Dame when they did. When they were the big bad Hurricanes. Yeah. You come on up to Notre Dame Stadium in November, son. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, you come on up there. Then you could talk about being a true national championship team.
Yes.
Because Notre Dame will go down there. They'll go and play them. They'll play them anywhere. Notre Dame doesn't back down from any school. They never have, and they never will.
Wow, you just had me ready to run through a brick wall right there.
Yeah,
well done, Greg.
I think Greg nailed it, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what I can add to that. I'll just say I think the beauty of Notre Dame being independent is that they can attach to whoever they want to. And, they have a really great setup right now where they get the benefits of being in the ACC without playing an ACC schedule all the time. And if it gets weaker, they find a new home. I think Notre Dame brings a lot of value to any conference, right? Like, it's a global brand as much as you want to poke fun at it. It's a global brand. It's got a TV contract, which it probably won't share, but it's got a TV contract. And it brings eyes. I mean, whether Notre Dame's good or bad, you say you're playing Notre Dame, fans are going to show up, people are going to tune in. It is the premier brand in football, whether they're good or bad. People want to see it. Even if they just want to see Notre Dame lose, they're going to tune in. So I think Notre Dame remains in a position of in an advantageous position no matter what they choose. And I don't see anything that's really going to cause them to have to join a conference anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, gentlemen. I always tune in to watch Notre Dame because I prefer like to see them lose, maybe more in the Kelly era than the Freeman era. But they are a national brand. They will continue to be independent, and we're looking forward to seeing some great football. I think that, unfortunately, some of their traditional rivalries will go away. I think Michigan and Notre Dame aren't even going to play in the time that they're slated. I think that will get changed by the time we reach up there. I think the Jude Shalele will be done after this year. I don't see USC scheduling another difficult game, knowing that they're playing Big Ten conference opponents, and it's just sad because obviously this is a program, rooted in history. This is college football, and it is unfortunately one of those things. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for being on here. Before we do our outro, just want to say to the family of Johnny Lujak, just wanted to say sorry for your loss. Obviously, the former Notre Dame Heisman Award winner passed away at the grand old age of 98. We should all be so lucky. What a life that he lived. And we all hope that we could, live a life that could even come close to what his standards were. Greg, before we head out, let us know where we can all find you and your work.
Well, I'm at Twitter, X now. X, yeah, at Greg Cowboys. And of course, all of my articles are on Team NBS Media. That's basically what I've got going.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Greg really downplayed his role at Team NBS Media. He has been a massive contributor there for many, many years. He produces articles not only on Notre Dame football, Dallas Cowboys football, the Lakers. He goes and talks about anything and everything. He has a tremendous amount of great content. He is a wealth of knowledge. So make sure you go and check out his work and follow him. He's a great guy to talk to on Twitter as well. Like I said, very knowledgeable guy. Nate Atkins, where can we find you on social media? And also, where can we find your work?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media at Nate_Atkins3. And you can just find me on the Bears Wire. That's where most of my writing is at. So NFL season's kicking off. I'll be talking about the Bears. I'll actually have an article coming out tonight analyzing their game against the Colts. So you can find me there.
Absolutely. Another guy is very knowledgeable on the game of football. He has a lot of strong opinions on it that you can find on his Twitter. Great guy to talk to. He always comment on his stuff. He always replies. And it's always fun to chop up football with him. We'll keep him in touch when it comes to the Chicago Bears this year. And for everyone watching, we just want to say thank you. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Go Irish. Once again,
Go Irish.
I'm hammering minus 21 against Navy. I think that they're going to smoke them in Dublin. I think this is going to be the start of a very successful tenure for Marcus Freeman, for myself, for the boss Joe Cardozo, and for everyone at Team NBS Media. We'll catch y'all next time. Have a good one.